Now, to start this evening's program, I'm pleased to introduce our presenters. We are lucky enough to have three very experienced artists to take us through the orientation. Let me introduce our show manager, Angela Lane, along with Kate Taylor and Lisa Hickey, who will tell you everything you need to know to be successful at the Cabbagetown show or any show for that matter. I'll now turn the program over to Angela.
One of the things that I think a lot of people do, Kate does this and I do this, and I think Lisa maybe has a different way, but plan your booth display ahead of time. Kate, do you want to just jump in here?
Yeah, this is actually really old. I can see these paintings are super old, but I do this in Excel where I have one square that equals one, like usually 6 inches within the booth. So I can be very accurate about what pieces are going to fit in the space, but also which colors go together. So sometimes I'll do this. I try and do this up to 6 weeks before the show. And by looking at what I've got and what I'm working on, I can then kind of say, oh, I have got like way too much blue. I need to add some other colors, or I'm missing these shapes. And this is where you can kind of see there's a whole bunch of different sizes that are kind of there. And I can make sure that they're all, they've got lots of different sizes to appeal to everybody. But I also try and make it pretty modular. My work is pretty energetic. And so I find if I also have a whole bunch of different sizes and nothing kind of fits together, it can be too much. So that's kind of, I'm looking for something that is going to be calm and communicates what I'm trying to do and isn't distracting anything away from the work.
Yeah, so I think that's important, like with your work and somebody else who maybe has another reference point. I would say the similar things, like you can see that Kate keeps similar lines and like it's really busy. So the lines are similar. And even in a booth that has like 3-dimensional objects and things like that, you have to think about someone steps back. What's the overall impression of your booth? Like, what do you see first? And I think that's why in my booth, I'll have my big piece at the back. Like I'll have something that anchors the booth, some large piece or something from a color perspective that it draws you in initially. Like we're all creative people and we know how our eyes move creatively around a space, a painting or an object or whatever. I think that people do that in your booth as well. So you want to make it attractive to people. Lisa, what do you do for planning the booth?
I'm so old school, which is my nice way of saying I'm not very technically or computer savvy. So I just do analog. I have my notebook and I grid it out just like that, and I draw it out. So you know exactly what's going on there, but I do it on my old-fashioned graph paper. I used to wing it, and it is possible, but it's such a headache. It is such a headache to wing it. If you can just take a little bit of time beforehand to do something, either analog in a sketchbook or like what Kate's got there, you will save yourself such a headache when you get to the park. You'll know what to bring. You'll know where to put it. If you have folks helping you, you'll be able to kind of delegate. So I cannot recommend enough.
Yeah, I agree. Especially this show because, you know, we're setting up on Friday morning, which means people are going to be in the park even before the show is officially open. And that allows you to also just go a little bit on autopilot. Like that painting goes there, this painting goes here. I can talk to somebody at the same time hanging something versus having to really think about it and sit back. And it's just like, it just adds another level of stress that you can try and alleviate.
Totally. And doing the graph paper, if you're not great on the computer, it does the exact same job. So
yeah, it's the same thing, really.
Yeah,
I'm just lazy because that way I can just use the same grid.
It's so much better, Kate. I got to sit down with you and show you today. But it's I can't recommend enough the idea that Kate gave too of keeping things a little bit consistent. And I'd say, you know, more isn't always more. Less is sometimes more. So that overall look is really important, whether you're a jeweler or a potter or a painter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just a few helpful things for your booth. I just want to point out, so your booths have to be weighted for this show. So please make sure you have sufficient weight in case of wind and take stuff in case it rains. So the show goes on regardless of the weather. And I think you need to be prepared. So plan for the worst and hope for the best. I think that's really the case for planning your booth in regards to like different elements that you might have. Make sure that people have a clear view from outside your tent and I guess easy access inside. I've seen things before where people, now again, it might change for some exhibitors, like you might have like something at the front and that's the best way for people to see your work because it's very small, like a jeweler. Or if you're doing food, obviously you don't want people coming and touching everything, so you would have something in front. But for a lot of exhibitors, you want people to have easy access to be able to see and explore the materials that you're selling. So I would just say make it easy for people so they can see stuff. And like Lisa said, there's a chair, like if you're going to have a chair, don't let it block your work or your entry. And Lisa, I think that was a really good point. You talked about having it like eye level, like a stool
Yeah.
versus low chair. And then booth signage and names. I think I have a few slides later on. We can talk about that, some examples. And a guest book again to collect your names. I think we talked about how important it was to collect your names, but you want to make sure that you're doing that. And I think it's a lot of these things we've talked about, so I'm going to skip through. So here's just samples of different grids and different layouts. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. These are the black grids that you would get from AER rentals. So I would just, the only thing I want to point out here is you might want to consider the weight of the art that you have. So if you have very heavy work and you're hanging your grids horizontally versus vertically, like in these photos, when you do them horizontally, all the weight is on your tent structure. So I would just be careful, depending on your tent, whether it's steel or aluminum or whatever, make sure that your system, even like the ties, can hold that weight. So the heavier your work is, you want to actually have it stabled. So in this case, Morgan's got his work, it's actually touching the ground, same as the other artist here. It's actually, those grids are actually touching the ground, so it can hold more weight. Here's the fencing, just a better picture, so you can actually see the fencing. This is the rental fencing that you would get. So that's an option if you're renting fencing from AER. White grids are awesome because they kind of disappear a little bit more. And here's just some different options of how to hang things. Some artists do these wood panels. So here we have an artist that's actually put it on the fence wall, and then other people, these are just hanging off their tent grid, these wood things. And it looks really nice, the white backgrounds. I don't know if anybody, and here's another sample. This artist brings in entire walls and paints them. Laura here has totally like wood walls that she brings in and hangs her ceramics on. Lisa, do you want to maybe talk about this a little bit? There's these mesh walls that you can buy from Flourish, but I think you made your own.
Yeah, so the Flourish walls on the left of your screen there are beautiful. And they kind of reinforce your booth. They're just a little tricky to get. They're from the States. They're quite expensive. Sometimes there's a backup in terms of ordering. If you can get them though, they're fantastic if you have 2D art. So I couldn't get them, but I was able to make something. So that's my setup on the right there. I was able to make something kind of similar. I just used a mesh fabric from Fabricland. So it's really lightweight. I roll it up to store it in my garage when I'm not using it. And I use just hook eyes, very similar to what you would use on the mesh. So I think my advice would be with your booth would be get creative, look on Pinterest, look on the internet, go to your fabric stores. You can get so creative with how you do this if you want to. There's a lot of creative ideas out there.
Yeah, so here's another sample of these wood slats. So the ones on the left is painted white, but basically they're these wood slats with these like angled cuts in them. And you can see Janet here has her art displayed on there. And here you can see a little bit better the white one here. So they've just done little etches and the painting hangs. So they're very light. It doesn't take up a lot of room in your vehicle, your storage unit, and people mix and match. So these are traditional chains. Yeah, you can do chains. That is hard sometimes to get your work sitting straight, but lots of people still use chains. And then here's some really different creative, if it helps display your brand or create an image that you're trying to do, just some different ideas. I'm going to go through here quickly. Here's fabric artist. Yeah. They use these like poles with I think chains or strings or whatever holding up. Both of these people are using poles to display textile art. So I think that's really a really great way to display. I bought these last year, those blankets. And here's like another wood display that people have used, wood walls. And then tabletop displays is another thing that people have to think about. So there's so many different opportunities and different options here. I think like you just recommended, there's so many different places you can kind of search and just look for ideas. Jewelers, even within jewelry itself, there's so many different ways to display your work and hang. So they're hanging these pieces because they're quite large. On grids, right? And but a lot of jewelers will use like these stands in front here. This is Michelle. She's actually, this is her booth on the right hand. She's on the board, and her these things are all like, they hold all of her stuff. These wood things, the countertop that she's built all collapses and holds everything. It's really, really cool. Jewelers can have like beautiful glass tables with sharing stuff and small displays, if depending on how large your work is. But think about your signage and how large that is and what your overall impression of the booth is. I can see this jeweler here on the left actually hung these bubble kind of figurine pieces, but most of the jewelry is down on this tabletop display. Ceramics, the same thing. Think about how you're displaying. What's your overall impression and look? Ginny Kim has a great big sign here that creates great imagery. Maybe stagger it. These artists are all in Cabbagetown, so just some different ideas on how to bring your work or how to hide your mess. She's got like a curtain rod at the back there, and she hides her stuff in the back. So it's like, what's the overall impression? Are you doing any activation in your booth? Lisa, have you ever done that? You've painted in your booth before, haven't you, or no?
Yeah, I have, not at Cabbagetown, but I think folks love, like, it's kind of like when I said earlier, bring a prop, bring a chunk of clay, bring a palette, like, it's kind of like that. It just gives folks something to talk to you about and something to engage in. So if you can do a part of your craft there and you're interested in that, I think it's a great idea.
Yep. I think you just have to, it's sometimes I find it's a bit of a hard balance because you start to get into a bit into the zone of producing something. You kind of forget that you're not really there for that, right? And so I find for me, it's hard to get interrupted when I'm in the middle of something. But I think that if you have something small that you're working on, I agree. It's it brings people in, they like to see the process. It's magical for them.
Especially if you have a different medium or something that people might not understand, right? Like, I think that it does actually help them understand the work a bit better.
Yeah.
So here's some signage, Kate's, Lisa's, and mine. There we go. three different ways to display your, like to have signage. But I don't know how many times I've gone by art shows and they don't have a sign in their booth. So I would just say exhibitors, you should really display who you are. The sign that you get from the show is very small. It's really just about a booth number so people can kind of follow along and know where they are on a map. But I would just, Kate, do you want to talk about yours just quickly?
Yeah, like, so I actually finally, after 14 years, had to replace my tent. And so I actually, I paid to have my name, like it's like vinyl press or whatever on that, my tent roof, so that it's there all the time. And so that was kind of nice because then I don't have to worry about bringing a sign. I did have a chloroplast one that I had before that I hung in the body of the work, like yours. But the other thing about naming too is I find a lot of times people assume that because they've been around for a long time, people are going to recognize them and they're going to recognize the art. And it isn't always the case. And one of the other things I always do is with my price tags, I also put my name on the price tags. So when people take a photograph of the art and they take a photograph of the price tag, then again, you have your name everywhere where it's easy to find you again.
Well, I think someone has a question here. I just saw it pop up.
Nicolette, looks like.
Lisa, do you want to talk about your signage? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm just wondering, I'm going to be doing the rental. Am I allowed to, like, I'm seeing the middle picture that is it just a safety pin, or am I able to, how am I able to post my name on a rental?
So that's my own tent. So I did use safety pins, but with a rental, you wouldn't want to do that. You'd want to use some sort of a tape or something that's not going to mark the tent.
I know some people have used those really, really high, those really strong magnets.
Yes,
outside.
Do it. Yeah.
So they'll put two of those magnets together. I also know somebody who used bull clips, like, so nothing that's going to pierce it, I would say. That's something that you would want to reach out to AER with, because I think you would just want to make sure with the tent rental company, I would just be careful about that. I would say you want to use like clips.
I'd say, yeah, I take back the tape thing because sometimes it's so hot that would actually stain the tent. So clips or magnets is a great idea.
The other thing is like what Angela has is she's got like a corrugated plastic sign that's grommeted. And so I can actually zip tie that right into the grid of the tent at the top, like so that it doesn't get in the way. It doesn't kind of create a sightline problem, but it can fit in any tent.
Yeah, so maybe that's not the best picture, but yeah, I had those. I have a grommeted Coroplast sign that I printed. I don't know, I think it was $70 or something like that. It's a good size. It's probably bigger than Lisa's sign. And then I just zip tie that to the structure inside the booth, so it's actually quite high. And you can easily see that sign. You can easily see that sign outside the booth.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
oops, sorry. Oh shoot, I wanted to go back. I just want to say also in this picture is 3 different kinds of little tables. So I know some people have like big, huge displays with tabletops. So I'm talking about somebody who is maybe has more open space within their booth. There's lots of different things you can do for tabletop. Kate has a very simple folded table. This in my booth is just a small table and I've draped it so I could use storage underneath. And Lisa has a really cool table that she made. So I actually have a picture here. I don't know if anybody has any questions about it, but Lisa, do you want to briefly just mention what you've done here?
Yeah, for me, it's just always about storage and space. So it's just a box that clicks together. And I store everything in there. My lunch goes in there, my water, my sunscreen, everything gets hidden in there. And then at the end of the day, it just folds, it all comes apart and folds away. So yeah, hiding stuff, keeping it clean, and having a surface where people can write down their email for you. Those are the important things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like yours too, because it's a bit higher.
Yeah.
Bending down so much. So I really like that. Just very briefly about getting around. So one of the things pre-show prep that you have to think about as well is like, how do you get your stuff to the show? What's the easiest way? So I created, so this is my vehicle here, and I created this sort of like box in my vehicle. So it's actually, you can't see the tent there, but it actually is the exact height of my tent when it's all folded up in its case. So it slides under there, my walls slide under there. And then I have a little bit of room for like a ladder and like my tools and stuff. And then my art just all sits on top. And the reason I do that is because then often your art goes in my car first. And then so that I don't have, my work is in caustic, so it's easy to damage. So I don't like it like laying around, and I don't think anybody likes their work laying around, but I think with anything, it's easy. It's really works well for me because as I take my work down, I can actually put it in a vehicle or set it aside. And then when I put all my work in there, then I collapse my tent. And then I put my tent and my grids and everything in there. I don't know, Kate, you actually made something similar just recently.
I did, yeah, because I was finding that with the way I was working before is because the tents are heavy, they kind of have to be in the bottom, which means you have to put those in first. And when you're doing an outdoor show and the weather's always not great, then it's nice to be able to kind of put the work in the car before having to do the tent. So yeah, and I just made it out of scrap wood. Yours is much nicer than mine. Mine's pretty basic, but it definitely does.
I got the idea from, I think it was Sherry Hart. She had her box to hold her art in her car up like that, but actually became her standing unit table inside her booth. It was awesome. Anyway,
yeah,
that's where it came from.
The other thing is we did also have a question earlier about whether or not you can rent dollies, and there's no dolly rental for this show. But like Angela's got there's a whole bunch of other things you should be kind of prepared with either carts or.
Yeah, so this is a cart that I bought from Uline. It's awesome. Kate, you have the same one, right? It's basically a Rubbermaid laundry cart, but it really can hold quite a bit of work. It does have small wheels, so depending on weather, sometimes that's a challenge, but there are a lot of pathways at this show, so it actually works really well for Cabbagetown. And then I always take a small step stool. I don't know, depending on your height, I think it's a good thing in your booth to be able to take things on and off your walls a lot easier.
I use a wagon from Costco. It's like a kid's wagon. It folds up, and it is a lifesaver. I used to use a dolly, and I find the wagon is so much easier.
I have one of each, and I use it depending on the show. So where you've got a lot of concrete, I love the laundry cart because it's also great. Well, it folds almost pretty much flat, so it takes up less space in the car. But it's also nice because you can kind of store stuff behind your tent afterwards. But in some of the outdoor shows, we've got lots of bumpy grass. The big wheels of the wagon are kind of better, so it's good to have on.
Yeah, I think it depends on the show, like you're saying, but Cabbagetown does have these paths, which does make like you can, if your tent bag has wheels on it, it's pretty easy to get your tent into the space and things like that. But definitely a cart or a dolly is very helpful. I think dollies just take up a lot of room in your vehicle. But again, if you have a big vehicle, a big van, there you go. It's not so much a question, but mine's always like space.
That's what I should say. I drive a Honda Fit, and I'm able to fit my entire booth, tent, weights, wagon, and my artwork all in one. So that's why I'm
pretty amazing
about space.
Yeah, so since you mentioned weights, let's talk about weights. So yes, you can rent weights. If you're not renting a tent, you can still rent weights. You can rent a package of 4. Lisa's made these weights and I've made similar weights. They work really, really well. Lisa, do you want to just tell us a little bit about that, what you use?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about renting the weights. Until this year, so for 15 years, I've always just rented weights. I have my own tent. And the nice thing about that is that you're not lugging your 40 pounds of weights around. They're just at your site. So if you can afford it, do yourself a favor, rent the weights. You don't have to move them. I actually made these for a different show down in Oakville where my tent almost blew away. And I actually love using them. So I bring them to all my shows now. And it's just I think it's 8-inch PVC pipe. I put some duct tape on the bottom and filled them with concrete, the Quikrete that you buy at Home Depot. They were the easiest things in the world to make. And they're pretty heavy. They're about 25 pounds each.
Yeah, so I have the same, and I would just say I put big hooks on the top of mine so I can hold it with my hand instead of my fingers, because that kind of hurts my fingers a lot with the weight. So if you are making your weights, I would just suggest something like that, because it's way easier to move them around because they are pretty heavy.
You can kind of see on the side of mine, I have big handles. I just put handles right in them.
Oh yeah, that's right. You have good handles
And
on the
it's,
side.
yeah, it's
And
very,
I just bought some from, I think it was from Amazon. You can actually fill them up with, well, I put play sound because it's really heavy in different Ziploc bags, and you can kind of, and those actually sort of, they wrap around the legs. So
oh,
that's,
yeah,
but I also rent my weights just because it's a pain in the ass.
yeah.
I'd rather just spend the money to have my weights there and I don't have to worry about them.
All right. So, and then zip ties, think about zip ties, D-ring, like little hooks and everything like that that you need for to participate in your show. But they actually have reusable zip ties, so they're awesome.
And they work. I've been using my same pack for about 3 years now.
Yeah. One of the ways, if you do have two-dimensional work, is that's easier for hanging instead of always fussing with the wire behind your piece, and to also have it hang flatter against the wall, is to use D-rings at the top. So this is a bit fuzzy, but anyway, you can also, what I do, and Kate, I think you're the one who gave me that idea and recommended that to me, is just to put these D-rings on the top of your work, even though that's not how you're going to hang your work. You pull them off later on, but it definitely is like a quick setup.
Yeah, and I always make sure that they hang above the top of the frame. Again, people kind of say, "Oh, like it makes it look ugly," but honestly, nobody notices. And you have to remember too, you're in a park. Like there's grass, there's cows behind you, there's there's a whole bunch of other stuff. No one's going to notice that your D-rings are hanging up, like, a quarter of an inch.
Honestly, Kate, I resisted that. I resisted that for like 10 years. I did it last year. It saved my setup. I'm gonna
I know.
by like 45 minutes or an hour. It is so easy with the D-rings like that. Just do it.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
So another thing to think of is how you display your pricing and your tags, or like information and everything. So there's so many different ways. And again, Pinterest, looking at all the different shows, visiting shows and seeing what artists are doing, pay attention to some of that detail. There's some other shows before our show, so I would say go visit them and look at how people are displaying their information in their booth. But it can be as simple as using like a name tag to like a curtain hook to S hook or more.
Yeah.
If you're looking to buy a tent, this is a great company. We can't really recommend one company over another, but I know there's a lot of people who have purchased canopies. I bought my canopy bag from them. They're even just sold a new bag.
They're also just up in Vaughan, and they can actually piecemeal, so you can kind of choose if you want. You can custom build your own tent. So you can choose, do you want steel or aluminum? Do you want this kind of shape? Do you want that shape? Do you want what kind of bag? What kind of level of walls do you want? Which is kind of handy.
We always recommend a white tent. It seems to showcase everybody's work better. Prepare for rain. Boots and pool noodles, if you can get them, or hula hoops, work in the corner of your booth as well. That helps just keep the roof taut and in your booth, so that the water rolls away if there is calling for rain. So that's a good thing to keep it as well.
Yep. It's amazing how effective pool noodles are.
Yeah.
And I think we've covered all of this.
Yeah.
Oh, just want to point out other things to know about the show here. There are local B&Bs that are reasonably priced. I don't know if they're booked or not. But there's, the area is well served by TTC, so I would say, recommend people to do that. I think I mentioned that. But, also there's retail stores and restaurants along, Gerard and Parliament, so for people, if you need something ahead of time or after setup or whatever. But there is a home hardware store that's not too far away, on Parliament, and there's a Shoppers Drug Mart also on Parliament if you need things.
And again, I would really, really recommend to your clients, if they're coming, to take public transportation, like either an Uber or TTC. There have been definitely people I know that have decided to drive, and then they call me and said, you know what, there's no parking. I'm so frustrated. I have to drive home again. So
I've had that happen. Oh, I've had that happen too. And if you have clients or collectors who are able-bodied and like a bit of an adventure, I've started telling my collectors to park over on Broadview and then walk down and walk up through the farm and make a bit of an adventure out of it, because it saves the entire nightmare of even trying to get into Cabbagetown.
that's
A
nice.
lot of people don't want to come near Cabbagetown because they know the whole festival's going on. But if they can park on Broadview, have a coffee at the Broadview Cafe, and then walk over, and a lot of folks have done it and said it was quite nice.
Mhm.
I don't know if I think we've covered everything that was in the presentation. I don't know if anybody has specific questions or not, but we're sort of coming to the end. We went quite a bit over time, 50 minutes over time, but if you have questions, we're happy to chat.